Hello, I'm Bob the Bookerer and welcome to my channel. And I mean, as the title of my channel suggests, the name of my channel suggests, the Booker Prize is something I read. And it's sort of been an interesting year, I think, with the Longlist having come out. Because I think when it initially came out, it was one that was full of so many surprises that I think it really knocked a lot of people sideways. You know, there were lots of big name authors who we were probably expecting to see there who didn't make it. So the obvious one being Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, but also we, didn't see, for example, Salman Rushdie with Victory City, or we didn't see Benjamin Myers with Cuddy, or a few other big books that I think people kind of assumed would be natural Booker kind of fodder, really. And it's interesting, part of me was wanting to sort of let sort of sit on it a little bit, because 2 weeks ago when the announcement was made, I was doing a live stream and I was reacting live to it and trying to process my thoughts on what it was and to really kind of unpick what was going on in that, because it was quite a confusing list in some ways if you were expecting the classics, I suppose, of, what things we would expect normally to see there. However, I think now the dust has settled and we've had just about 2 weeks since that announcement, part of me wanted to revisit that and now properly think about that with the gift of hindsight. And then again, it's only been 2 weeks and whatever, but ultimately I kind of wanted to have a broader think about what that might actually look like. And I'm sort of slowly but surely making my way through the Booker long list. I have read 7 of them so far. I'm on the 8th and 9th technically, because I'm listening to Pearl as an audiobook, and I'm reading Paul Murray's The Bee Sting physically, which I still have a long way to go on because it's quite a long book. But I think the thing that I sort of have been finding so far has just been to really kind of evaluating the books for what they are and kind of taking them as a whole. And there are a couple of points I guess I want to make. This is not all to just sort of completely defend this list and say it's the best list ever. As much as, there have been books on this list I've enjoyed, there are books that I've also loved this year that haven't made it. And I would have loved to have seen them have that platform. But at the same time, I think the thing I keep coming back to is the Booker Prize. I think the healthiest way sometimes to look at the long list and the short list, but especially the long list, is as a suggestion. Is basically 5 people in a room who have read 160 books and have sort of processed and mulched that down into the 13 books that they can agree on. And I think that's a big fundamental part of it, is there is a consensus exercise going on within this. It may well be that, some of the judges may have kind of had very similar lists to me, but it may well be that the other judges didn't necessarily agree with them on that. Fine, that happens, that's part of the process. So I think if you kind of consider it as 5 people coming together for a very intense book club and creating recommendations from there, that's kind of the flavour, I think, of what we end up with. And I think and obviously people are very welcome to their opinions of not liking the long list at all or feeling really quite slighted by it. There are some books, as I mentioned, that I'd have loved to have seen on there. Benjamin Myers with Cuddy, Tom Crew with A New Life, countless other books that I think have been brilliant this year. However, we don't know, firstly, if those books were even submitted and therefore considered. We don't know how those books landed in the room. And also, because some of the books, are ones that nobody was really expecting, these are also books that many of us haven't read yet. So I think that's been the really exciting part of this puzzle going in, because 150 pages, no, 200, around 200 pages maybe into The Bee Sting, I am loving this. I did not expect to really enjoy this book as much as I've been doing so far. I thought it might be a little, it's probably unfair to say so, I think I kind of had this image of it as being a slightly lighter weight book than it actually is. And obviously physically it is a very heavy book as well, as I'm finding as every time I take it on a commute with me. But I'm finding this book is drawing me in ways that I completely did not expect. For example, Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein is one that I've not read yet, but I kind of I'm really jazzed for. I kind of think I'm gonna really enjoy it. Whether that's true or not, we shall see. I'm currently listening to Pearl by Sian Hughes, and that is a book that is really blowing me away at the moment. It's a book that I am fairly sure will be minimum 4 stars, will probably be a 5-star read to me, even though stars are not a perfect science. But, there are so many books on this list that I also think would not have had a platform this year in quite the same way. I think of something like Western Lane, which by Chetna Maru, which I think would actually have fallen a little bit more by the wayside, actually, had this prize not sort of found it in that sense. I think it was a book that, you know, had been out there, people had been enjoying and reading, but I don't think it had this sort of big audience in quite the same way. All of which is me saying, basically, with the benefit of 2 weeks of hindsight, which is still not much time, it's useful looking back, I think, on the Booker long list and kind of acknowledging it for what it is. It may well be that I don't like all 13 books on the list. Granted, that happens most long lists. It may well be that I don't agree with the shortlist or the winner. Again, that happens. And I think the interesting thing that I found from reading back over old shortlists of the Booker, which is, you know, what my channel started as and is still in theory doing, I keep on getting sidetracked by reading lots of other things. But I think the thing that really strikes me from having done that and having looked back over Booker prizes of the past, the Booker prizes of yore, has been actually that often it doesn't necessarily matter what book is shortlisted or wins. Obviously for the author, they'd probably quite like to win. What often is the case is how it showcases certain books and certain authors in ways that previously hadn't happened. If you think of someone like Sian Hughes with Pearl, that's Indigo Press, it's an indie press. Would that book have had this kind of level of appeal and you know, would so many people be reading it otherwise? Perhaps not. You know, it's a way of these books finding their audience, and that is a really positive and amazing thing. Again, doesn't mean that it's always necessarily the right long list, but you know, the sort of creating a long list by committee by all of us trying to create our top books would probably not have, you know, ended up with the same books anyway. And it's worth noting, you know, going into this whole thing, I'd maybe read 30 or 40 books that were eligible. Maybe that's a bit high, actually, maybe less than that. And of those, I chose the ones that I really liked and would like to have seen there, and also books that I knew of that were big, that could well stand a chance. I think the thing here is also that I didn't read all 160 books. I would quite like to one year. Booker prizes, if you're ever looking for a judge, I'm right here. Hello, hi, I will do this. Okay, so in the process of filming that, my chair broke, which is wonderful. It's like an old wooden chair, so I think it's kind of, its time was long coming, either that or I won't take it personally. But I think essentially what I want to say as a closing point here is that these prizes, I think, are wonderful suggestions of what to do. You know, if we look back over time, other books will make their marks in other way. Margaret Atwood's book, you know, big famous book, The Handmaid's Tale, did not win. It was shortlisted, but another book beat it out and is now a book that, although, you know, relatively still, you know, The Old Devils is still sort of liked. It's still, you know, Kingsley Amis is still a well-known author. Margaret Atwood's book has carried on to have additional relevance. So I think the prize is not the be-all and end-all. I think it's a lovely thing that we have, and I think we can take it as such. All of that said, I still obviously would have liked The Colony to have won last year, but you know, I've obviously let go of that. I'm totally not still bitter about that at all. But I urge you, I guess, to take it as it is, to read the books that sound interesting to you. It's not a race, and see which ones really appeal to you. And if there are other books that you think would have been great additions to the list, especially ones from countries that just keep on not being there, so like Australia and New Zealand, I would love to hear them. I think I would quite like if the comments of this video are basically a nice recommendation list of other books that you think would have made great additions to the list, and also just books that you're really enjoying from the current list. So with that, I'm going to leave that there and try and find a chair that works, and speak to you all soon. Bye bye, take care.